Everybody, Atlas in the District. My name is Atlas. Thank you all for joining this session. My name is Atlas Amanda, and I work for the Alliance to End Homelessness Ottawa, one of the lovely organizations that's putting this conference on. So I will be your moderator today. So before we get into this session, there's a couple things that I'd like to go over. One of the things, if it's possible, I would like everyone to take a seat inward and just scooch in, so that if we have a couple people liking to join the session last minute, they can join in at the edges, so it just won't be as disruptive as we get going. Be respectful to our speakers. Thank you very much. Much appreciated, folks. Okay, so as always, we should get started with our land acknowledgement and acknowledge that we are standing on unceded, which means unsurrendered, Anishinaabe and Algonquin territory and land, which means, of course, that this land was never given up in any treaty at any given time. This land belongs to the Algonquin peoples since time immemorial, and it is up to us to defend the land and the water and the people, community, and culture. That is always very important, especially in terms of housing and the conversation of homelessness, especially in terms of Ottawa. We have extremely disproportionate rates of Indigenous folks without a home, without food, and without the core community that they need. So the land acknowledgement is more than just an acknowledgement, right? We're not just acknowledging it, we are fighting against it. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for attending the session today, and I'm going to pass it on to our lovely folks sitting over here who are part of the Lived Experience Committee that I am also very excited to learn from. So with that, I will let them take it away. Thank you very much.
Cool. So welcome everyone. My name is Katie. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the training specialist for Homeward Fest. And we have our lovely presenters. It'll be more of a panel sort of presentation. Also, as a heads up, there is going to be a slightly more engagement activity-based activity a little bit later. But like I said, my name is Katie.
I'm Lori. I'm one of the lived experts. I have been with Homeward Trust Participant Advisory Group for almost 2 years. I also work for Witcha Homeless Movement Shelter, which is one of 2 Indigenous shelters, First Nation shelters in Alberta. We have one here in Edmonton, the other one is in Westbridge.
My name is Rosemary, Fayant. I've been a member of the Purchasing Advisory Committee for 12 years. I was a member of the community for 25 years, and I've walked alongside the community members for the last 25 years in various capacities. I've advocated for them at the local, municipal, national, and international level in my 25 years of working with the community. And I guess that's it. I'm on Alberta time still. I'm really tired.
Hello, my name is Sonia. I'm on lived expert on the Youth Advisory Committee with Homeward Trust for about 6 years now. And yes.
Yeah. So, this is not the updated slides. That is okay. So, we join you guys here on this land from Edmonton, Alberta, which is situated on Treaty 6 territory. I want to thank the moderator for giving a land acknowledgement. For myself, as someone who is only settler ancestry, it's important for me as well to also be able to give a land acknowledgement. I don't think that we can respectfully and accurately discuss ending homelessness without also discussing and acknowledging the land in which we are trying to end homelessness on. So we would like to respectfully acknowledge our place as visitors in Ottawa on unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence on this land reaches back to time immemorial. As a visitor, we would like to thank these communities for welcoming us, communities that have deep connection with this land. We honor their enduring presence, resilience, culture, and history. Okay. So, like I said earlier, I'm not one of the Lived Expert Committee members, so you won't hear from me too much. The majority of this presentation is going to be really like a training that the Lived Experts developed with my help to be able to sort of talk about the principles of housing first. So in terms of what you will get by attending this session, you'll be able to observe and participate in a portion a first of its kind training created and delivered by people with lived experience. Through participating in the training, you'll be able to discover new perspectives on the principles of Housing First and new approaches to respond to common challenges. And then the last portion, which is actually going to come before the training, is an understanding of steps to consider if you would like to create a similar training in your home community. Wanted to make sure to equip staff with just a little bit of information, context, and kind of that behind the scenes in terms of what it takes to actually create a training like this in an ethical way and not a subsidizing way.
This presentation was, I can never say that word, collaboratively developed by the Participant Advisory Committee and the Youth Advisory Group of Homeward Trust Edmonton, and it represents the work and perspectives of all of our members. My kids and grandkids usually say I have a big mouth. What is a training? Our training is called kawegehanowak. Together we will house them. It is Housing First training created and delivered by the Participant Advisory Committee and the Youth Advisory Group from Homeward Trust. The training examines the principles of Housing First from our expert perspective.
In this sector, Housing First trainings are usually offered by workers who work in the field but don't necessarily have that lived experience of being on the receiving end of services they provide. Oh, sorry, can you hear me? Okay, good. Sorry. We wanted to find a way to address the lack of inclusion of voices of lived experience members and address the
That's the lack of inclusion. Yeah, I just,
okay. Since
Yeah, we're tired from all
we'll get there. Since 2022, it's been delivered 5 times, and we also presented on the training at last year's conference in Halifax.
The participants, half and egg are the 2 lived experience groups of Homeward Trust. Half is for adults 25 plus with lived experience, and the youth is from 16 to 24 years. We are lived experts and advocates. We bring knowledge that organizations wouldn't be able to access otherwise.
We bring forward ideas for projects and initiatives. We do our best to stay solution focused on how to improve the lives of people who are still facing barriers when trying to access housing services. We work from a place of mutual respect that brings projects into action, and it's our hope that it will have a continued impact with the work we do in our communities.
okay, awesome. So, like I said, I don't have lived experience of homelessness. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the behind-the-scenes aspects of creating the training, more from the staff viewpoint, looking at the content development of it, and really trying to illustrate how we created this training while also following the principles of Housing First. So there is a little variation in terms of what the principles of Housing First are. Every kind of website has slightly different phrasing. Sometimes stuff is moved around or split into 2. The 5 principles that we use within our training is access to housing with no housing readiness requirements, participant choice and self-determination, individualized, recovery-oriented, and participant-driven supports, harm reduction and trauma-informed care, and community and social connection. So this idea was brought forward to me through my role as the training specialist by the committee members back in 2022. When it was brought up, I immediately jumped on the idea because it was very unique, and I knew that the value and what they really had to say and communicate would be something that would be unlike anything else that we've been able to deliver before. So with following that principle of no readiness requirements, something that was important for me was to not wait for our lived experts to prove or show their presentation skills. So it wasn't that they had to audition or sort of, audition for us to say, these are my presentation skills, this is the content that I want to bring. It really started with the idea and the content first. And then throughout the year that it took to really develop the training and get it off of its feet, During that time, we spent time with the lived experts to be able to develop their capacity in terms of presentation skills. So while the content was being created, we also worked with them to do pilot sessions, to do practice sessions in small groups and bigger groups to help them be able to feel comfortable and feel ready to be trainers and presenters in their own right. And then for choice and self-determination, we've been delivering this training for over, I would say a year and a half now. We've delivered it over 5 times. While we were creating the content, the format, the objectives, all of this, everything was left up to the lived experts. We've since given this training, something that I think is funny, that happens for me as a staff member and not necessarily for the lived experts, is that I get feedback a lot from staff members in our agency and in other agencies that we partner with, where staff will say, you know, it was really great, but like what I want them to talk about is this, or what I think the content should be is this, or what I think the topic should be is this. And what this training really centers on and focuses on is it's us going to the experts, those who have lived experience of homelessness, lived experience of our programs, and asking them what we need to hear. And that, I think, is what makes this training so special and so valuable. It's not us going to them and saying, like, okay, well, we want you to talk about this, here's the script, here's, you know, the key points that you have to hit. It's really us going and saying, what do we need to learn? How can we, as service delivery operators, improve our practice, improve our service delivery? What do we need to hear? And that's something I've checked myself, but then also checked other staff within our agency every time those kind of questions or feedback get brought up, where staff will kind of be the ones who are like, well, I would really like this. And in a sense, it's not about them. We try to really follow and operate from that nothing about us without us. So I joke with them every once in a while that if I'm getting paid, that they're getting paid. And if decisions and questions are coming up about what we want to do with the training, how we want to handle it, what the format is, do you want to come present at Canadian Alliance, it's them who gets to make the decision. Finally, in terms of that self-determination piece, when we were developing it, it was through their committee meetings, so they were receiving honorarium for their committee meetings, but when it came time to actually delivering the training, a huge consideration was how they were going to be compensated and what they were going to be compensated. So I won't spill the beans in terms of how much we compensate them, but we looked into what contracted trainers typically get given for 3-hour training. How much we typically provide someone from Canadian Alliance Training Association, from ORCODE, from mental health associations. And it was important to us that we matched that. For one point, because this training is valuable, what they have to say, what they will explain to us, the points that they're going to make is really valuable. It's as valuable, and if not more valuable, than all those other contracted trainers that I talked about earlier. So their compensation needed to be the same. But also for me, with that self-determination piece, if we're asking them to come and take time out of their day to talk about their personal experiences, they needed to be able to be compensated fairly where they could do that. They could take time off work without losing out on compensation, where they could make sure that they could get there in time, they could practice, and then it could be really done right, because it's not, you know, us doing them a favor by saying, like, yeah, you're allowed to come present. It's really them doing us a favor. The third one is individualized and participant-driven support. So the training has developed over the past couple of years. It's kind of gone through a couple of different evolutions. These are 3 presenters that deliver the training. We have about 7 or 8 in total though. So every time the training is delivered, it is slightly different, which I think is really unique and interesting about it. It depends on who is in the audience. It's meant to be very interactive and engaging, but it also depends on who's actually delivering the training. So while we do have like stock slides that are designed to be able to help prompt discussions, help remind our lived experts the points they wanted to make, what is talked about is going to be different. And the key points or the driving home messages are also really determined based off of the people who are delivering the trainings. Like I said, it's in a constant state of evolution. Candace Thomas, who is not here with us, but is one of our live experts, she presented last year, she came up with the idea of creating scenarios of really commonly faced challenges that frontline workers have in their day-to-day work, and bringing that up in the context of how would the live experts solve that issue or go about resolving that challenge while also upholding the principles. So that will be a part of the training that we deliver in a little bit. Right. And then the fourth one was harm reduction and trauma-informed care. This training is based off of our lived experts really like giving a part of themselves to our audience members. I firmly believe that when you tell your story and when you talk about what's happened to you, in a way it is sharing a part of who you are and sharing a part of yourself. It can be, when it's not done correctly, very triggering or very tokenizing for a lot of people. The harm reduction and trauma-informed care piece was really centered around our duty to be able to protect the presenters' well-being, their emotional safety throughout the entire process. So we have a couple of safeguards that we've set up in that case. Whenever someone comes to the training back home, everyone is given a guideline for attending. So it outlines what the training is going to kind of look like, that as a frontline worker, you're going to hear stories that might be difficult to hear and that also might feel challenging to what your perspective is on the space or on the work. And we really encourage those who are coming to not take it personal and to not feel like it's a personal attack or critique when you're hearing stories that are difficult or someone's experience of the program that maybe wasn't necessarily positive. We always have two presenters and an alternate. We know that you won't always be in the right state of mind to share personal stories or kind of what's happened to you in your past. So we always have at least two presenters. We have an alternate just in case something happens for someone, and one of those alternates has to step out, whether it's before the training or during the training, and then that way the alternate can step in. And then we have debriefs before and after. So the training itself is only 2 hours long, but we compensate them for 3 hours. That additional hour is a 30-minute debrief beforehand and a 30-minute debrief after. The 30-minute debrief beforehand operates as an opportunity for us to smudge, for us to check in with each other, to make sure things are okay, that they're in an emotional space where they're able to deliver the training, and then also the logistics, behind the scenes stuff makes sense. And then the debrief after is to make sure that if there's anything weighing on them, anything that's really difficult for them, they have the space to be able to check in with us and talk to us about what's going on. And then they have my contact information as well, and I've always let them know if something comes up in a day, a week, a month that happened to them during the training or an interaction that they had that they want to talk about, I am available. And then this photo is a photo of an eagle feather that was gifted to us for the training, and one of our presenters had it beaded. We then purchased a feather box for it. We didn't bring it to Ottawa because I was really afraid it would get broken in transit, and it's very beautiful and it's very important, so I didn't want that to happen. But something we tried to do is include the cultural significance or cultural sort of connections to the training. So we offer smudging beforehand. Those who are coming to the training are also offered that, as long as there's enough time. And then we have an eagle feather there to really also help like protect and center us throughout the training. Okay, and then this is what the feather box looks like in the front. And the last part is community connection. So I worked at Homeward Trust for 5 years now. I worked frontline for a number of years. Something that I thought was interesting about the training that we got, or really the lack of training that we got, was as a frontline worker, the only opportunity for a lot of people that you have to engage with someone who is currently experiencing homelessness is your participant. And we don't offer a lot of trainings that really talk about like what is street culture, what maybe is going on in someone's head, what is it like to experience homelessness and move through these programs. And so the only person you can really talk to is your participant about that, and that's not always a ethical conversation to have. If you're the worker and you have a client or a participant, there is an automatic power imbalance. The client or the participant is probably going to tell you a lot of what you want to hear because that worker is in charge of your housing and you don't want to piss them off. But also that client and that participant isn't being compensated for their knowledge, for their what they have to say, for their expertise. So this training offers a sometimes only opportunity for our frontline workers to ethically engage with someone who has experienced homelessness and who has gone through our programs. It offers an opportunity to go through the 5 principles, but also an opportunity to just ask questions and talk about what it was like, what it is like, how we can improve in a place where they are being compensated, where they can say no if they don't want to, and where they are able to get mental health supports before and after. Finally, like the phrase that we kind of use is like it offers help for the helpers, frontline workers, especially as well. What we know about training and the space is that there's a lot of burnout and there's a lot of turnover. I'll talk about this in a little bit, but when we're able to properly inform and train staff on the work that they're doing and the community that they're going to be supporting, it really reduces burnout and it can increase worker retention. So what this does is provide them the opportunity to have help for the helper. And then finally, from this point of view, I think that it's really hope building. Some of our presenters have said that it's very encouraging and hope building to talk to some of the frontline workers who are really fighting the good fight and doing the good work and reminding them that there are excellent and amazing workers out there. And then similarly for the workers, in a non-condescending, non-tokenizing way, it can be really, really encouraging and great to see people with lived experience who have gone through the very programs that you are working in, who are successfully housed currently, who are at a place of healing and resiliency where they're able to deliver training, where they're able to come and stand in front of people, where they have jobs, hobbies, and a fulfilling and sort of like well-rounded life. And because some of our programs are quite short-term, you don't always get to see that, and it can be helpful to kind of see what we're working towards and where our help is going to help guide people to, even if we're not around anymore. Okay, so for the impact that it's had on Edmonton's community, I pulled some quotes of some feedback that we got from those who have attended this training. So while the principles might not always be directly relevant to the attendee's position, it's important that those attending consider how it affects their work and what they do. I really liked hearing snippets of the lived experts' personal stories. That made it very real. And then it was one of the most impactful training experiences I have ever had. From a staff perspective, what this training has done, the impacts are manyfold, and I don't want to talk too much during the training because this is not really about me. But from my perspective, as the person who books, coordinates, and delivers a lot of the training for frontline staff, this has helped illuminate other areas of our training program that need a little bit more work, or other areas of the training program where we should add in additional trainings. It's helped really highlight a previously untapped potential of those with lived experience of homelessness as trainers, as content developers. And then it's helped improve service delivery for many of our frontline staff. We've heard that over and over again, that it's been very beneficial for those who are delivering the work and are doing the work to be able to come to a training like this and learn new approaches and new perspectives to training, or to the philosophy.
What are the desired outcomes of the training? System changes. We want to make the system easier for people to navigate and for everyone to work together to get people connected to the resources and help that they need. This is done through increasing the amount of understanding and empathy that workers have towards their clients.
Unseen and identify barriers. We are able to point out stigmas and barriers that the community is facing that staff may previously not be unaware of or gone to. We can also provide knowledge and skills to help workers feel more prepared to identify those barriers and then dismantle them as they work with the community members. I'm a peer support specialist with the George Spady Clinical Access Team, and I've worked with housing workers, and I've had workers say, I can't work with that person, they're swearing at me. And I've had to tell them that's just their street bravado. When you're walking around all night, trying to find a place to stay warm, especially in 40 below weather, you know, that's to protect yourself. And if you have 5 or 6 workers within a year, you are going to be pissed off. You know, having to tell your story over and over. And it's amazing how the workers respond when you tell them that.
Yeah, and then like I said earlier, this training is a unique opportunity to help prepare workers and staff for the community that they're going to be working with, the population that they're trying to house, that they wouldn't necessarily otherwise get access to in any other type of training. Okay, so I know this is kind of a packed room, and I know that this can be slightly awkward to do. As a fellow introvert, I know there are many introverts in the room who are like, I really didn't want to participate in an activity. But we're going to transition.
She told us she's going to make you.
I will, it's fine. So what we're going to do is now sort of transition this presentation into really going through the training we've now just spent 30 minutes talking about. So I'm going to divide the room in half as best as I can. What it looks like in Edmonton back home when we deliver the training is we ask those who are coming, the frontline workers, managers, directors, whoever they might be, to participate in an activity where they, as the staff, get together. Everyone is divided up into usually 5 groups, and each group has one principal. The goal of that group is to go through a couple of discussion questions, or really just talk amongst yourself, to dig in deep about what that principle that's assigned to you means to you. When the activity is done, and people have been able to go back to their seats, we're going to ask a brave few to share what they discussed in their group, what kind of the consensus was, or what some differences were, what one person said participant choice was, what other person said participant choice was, and then we're going to hear from our lived experts on what it means to them, what it looks like in practice. So I want to be clear that this is not a test in any way, shape, or form. We don't know any of your bosses, it's fine. But really, like, the goal of this is not to have your answers completely and directly match the lived experts. It's more about expanding our perspective on the principles rather than looking for the right answer or the ones that are going to match up with those. So for those who are willing and who are able, I'll ask that I'm going to like stand kind of in this. So if you can see this hand waving, or if it's on this side of the room, you are going to be participant choice and self-determination. I have sheets of paper I'll hand out with instructions and questions. The questions are there to develop conversation, to get kind of the juices flowing. It's not required to answer them. There are so many more people here than I thought would be when I designed this activity in my head about how we were going to do this. So there's going to be a bunch of small discussions for all of that. We're going to put sheets of paper up on the side of the wall and give everyone Sharpies. So even if you're just talking to one other person in your group, you can go and write it out. The goal is that the lived experts will be able to see it too, so just keep that in mind when you're writing. If you're on this side of the room, you are going to be harm reduction and trauma-informed care. So again, I will hand out Sharpies and sheets of paper that have instructions as well as discussion questions. They're there to get the discussion going. It's not required to answer them, but writing them out on the wall, or not on the wall, sorry, on the sheets of paper that will be on the wall are a way of really getting the conversation going, and then our lived experts can see stuff that they can respond to. Okay, so does that make sense to everyone? Cool, okay, Julie and our moderator are going to start putting stuff up. If you guys want to turn to each other or turn your chairs, start kind of getting yourselves into smaller groups or bigger groups. If you don't feel comfortable, you guys want to help?
don't want to sing it. I wonder whether they have to write Venus markers to mark up the wall.
You guys good at participating in the activity? Yes? Okay. Here, you have that one down. Oh, excellent. Okay, here, I'll give this to you. Claudia is going to hand out some sheets for discussion questions. So if you want to write down your answers, put it inside.
I'm gonna be there. So, I'm gonna be in front of the window. I'll figure it out. So, what's gonna happen? I'm gonna be like that in the morning. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, if you're in the present training, if you finish that thought, we're gonna have a discussion about it too, so if you didn't get a chance to write it down, no worries. Okay, I know some folks are like still writing it down and everything, but I'll just kind of explain what we're gonna do next now. So like I said, the point of this activity is to expand everyone's perspective rather than like testing you guys on what the right answer is for what participant choice is or harm reduction. So normally we would have people kind of volunteer and read out some of their answers or talk about it. I am not gonna lie, I can't really see past like the first 2 rows. So if anyone wants to, feel free, that would be great. If not, I have no problem reading off of there. But what we'll do is hear a little bit about what you guys said, what you guys answered in terms of what each of the principles are, and then we're gonna turn it over to our LIP experts. So the first one is the staff perspective on participant choice and self-determination. These are the questions for context that we gave to the staff. Does anyone want to read some of these, or actually do we have to?
Yeah, absolutely. Do we have any other volunteers who want to read their own writing? Because I'm going to be horribly, I'm going to feel so bad if I mess up your writing, but I will do my best. No takers? Okay. All right, so up first, we have the choice of what to learn/research, which is really important. Participant choice and determination go hand in hand in order to see success client-led. Participant choice is more restricted. Determination can be seen in many different ways. So the choice of engagement/programming and level of engagement. In our line of work, we want to help and assist people with lived experience so much that we tend to disengage and end up with the intention to help enable them. So instead, let us do it is in quotations. So we see that happen for sure.
Already, I don't know if I'll try to read all of them.
Sounds good. And then there's just one more on this point. Participant choice to not follow rules, resulting in having to depart. Thank you. There we go. Nope, it's a great point. All together.
Okay, and then,
I was going to add one more, but we ran out of time.
yeah.
One of the other things that I noticed too is that from what my experience, what I've seen, because I work in domestic violence, which is hand in hand with homelessness as well. And what I noticed in our line of work was that there was once a client that was given a home, who's been living on the street for years and never actually lived in a home, and actually was able to access, and social workers got involved and got a place for this person. So he went in, and they were waiting for his furniture to come, but he didn't care, he slept on the floor. He was so used to sleeping on the ground, he had a bed there, he chose to sleep on the floor. Then eventually he was feeling so remorse, so full of guilt, that he's got this nice warm place, and his fellow comrades are still on the street. So what he ended up doing was bringing in those people into his home, like his friends, and that's their support system. And what ends up happening is he got evicted for that reason. So, and that's the perspective that they see and what participant choice and self-determination is. Like, we can say and what we define what it can be, but what they see it as is so differently once they've been living on the street and what they experience.
Awesome, thank you for sharing, yeah. On this sheet, we also heard cannot uphold with our safety concerns or level of capacity. First response should be, let's find a way to make it happen, not, sorry, we don't offer this service at the moment. And then an example, hearing from service users first, what they want to support with. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our LIV experts for them to talk a little bit about what this means to them.
Okay, what this means to me is that they were given the tools are given to ensure that a community member can live the life that they want. They have the right to determine the best possible choices as to where they live, how their program is spent, how their time in the program is spent, who their worker is, because a lot of them think they have to stay with the same worker. If there's a personality clash, you can request another worker. And I've advocated for community members that I work with to get another worker. And there's other choices. I always tell the community members on my caseload, you're the boss, I'm the employee, please don't fire me. You know, I need my job. But it gives that empowerment that they know that this is all about them, it's not about us. And I always tell them service plans aren't written in stone. We can change it in 3 months or can change it in a week. It's all about you. But I tell them I have the rock at home, so it's all about me. And it's a worker's job to explore with a community member what they need and help make that a reality when possible.
The only way for housing programs and individual housing journeys to be effective is if we follow this principle, because it's the participant's life essentially. There needs to be active reflection by the workers all around all the small and big decisions they make for the participants without even realizing that they're the ones making the decisions. Workers have a role in reminding participants of their right to self-determination, providing choices and listening to the participants' choices, and that their choices can be used to used as a tool to redevelop self-empowerment. It's also the workers' job to let them know they can say no, they're in charge, they can ask for something more or something different. If they're not comfortable in a basement suite, why not look for something on the second floor with a balcony? You know, give them options. They don't just have to settle because the housing worker's tired and they don't want to do anymore. Essentially, that's what happens a lot of the time, is that a worker's just kind of overwhelmed, done, and it's just like, nope, this is what you're gonna get. And you know, that's bullshit. You know,
Offering choice is crucial to when working with young people, especially Indigenous youth. So by providing opportunities for self-determination and identity formation, it can help create a sense of belonging, which can protect against negative outcomes. Indigenous youth often navigate complex historical and systemic inequalities, and allowing choice is a step forward, restoring the autonomy that has historically been denied in the communities.
Yeah. And then the example our audience member gave was actually perfect. I swear that was not a plan. So like I said, part of how we've been working to develop the training and really expand it is we came up with a scenario for each of the principles. We're only going to have time to talk about 2 today. To kind of talk about a common challenge that's faced for participants and frontline workers and how workers can still uphold the principle while kind of going through and figuring out a solution to that challenge. So the one that we came up with, participant is having issues with guest management, which is pretty common in any single program anywhere. The questions that we posed to our LIV experts were, how does participant choice and self-determination show up when supporting a participant who is struggling with guest management? And how can workers support a participant struggling with guest management?
We'll introduce this scenario and why we picked it. Part of the worker's role is to help participants understand the outcomes from certain choices, but not to make the choice for them or to tell them they need to make a choice. We can also empower participants to understand that they are allowed to make the choice to ask their guests to leave. A lot of times, when I was needing help, sometimes I would just send a quick text and, can you call me? I need to kind of get out of the situation. And that will, help them save face, right? Because a lot of people they'll just, either their friends will take it personally or their acquaintances, maybe not so much friends, but person's just using them for a place to stay. And it just helps them an easy out.
For them, they should plan with the worker how to use the worker as an out if you can't get someone with your unit. Teach them life skills and setting boundaries. Ask them how you can support them. I worked with a gentleman whose 18-year-old son came and he was going to be evicted. His son was released from care. He wasn't accessing the TAP program for youth. He wanted to live with his dad. He was gang involved. His landlady was going to evict him. And I told him, you're the one that found the place. You're the one that's worked so hard to maintain your place. Your son, where was he before when you were getting this place? He can access resources to get his own home. And between his housing worker and I, we just kept reiterating that. You're the one that did all the legwork. And he told his son to leave. And it was so hard for him to do. And I totally agree with you about when they bring their friends in and they get evicted, because they know what can happen on the street. They've lost family members, street family, to the elements, to violence. But it's just empowering them to tell people to go.
Yeah, and I will say, as a former frontline worker, hearing that message from those with lived experience is a lot more powerful than just a fellow worker. It's like, no, you can tell your participants they're allowed to pick out their friends. So the next principle is harm reduction and trauma-informed care. So I won't read all of this, but these are the questions that we posed to the side of the room. So some of what people wrote is trauma-informed care equals never re-traumatizing, person-centered, meeting people's needs where they're at, safe supplies, lack of transportation for substance treatments. Other folks wrote harm reduction is de-escalating active use, while trauma-informed care could be understanding the individual, showing care or empathy. Okay, and I'll turn it over to our expert.
Okay. Harm reduction is more than just protecting someone from potential negative outcomes of substance use or addiction. It is also a warm place to sleep at night. It's hot food filling their stomachs. Talk to them, stopping and saying hello, acknowledging their feelings and their presence, assuring them that they're not alone. Programs and workers should focus on reducing the impact of loneliness, preventing isolation, and safeguarding the emotional well-being of participants. And this trust is foundational of harm reduction, is a foundation of harm reduction. Participants need to trust their workers to be able to be honest about their needs. If participants feel their needs will be shamed or ignored, then they won't be honest about their needs or what needs to happen to keep them safe, which means our participants will not be safe.
And I always jump in and add more about harm reduction, because they know I do. Harm reduction is what all that Lori said, but it's also about not putting a person with mobility issues on a third floor walk-up. I mean, I'm getting old, I keep telling when carrying walkers up 3 flights of stairs and walking behind them so they don't fall and carrying a walker up. It's harder helping them carry their groceries up. I just said, man, you've got to ask for a lower floor. I can't handle this anymore. Yeah, trauma-informed care relies on trust, understanding, and acceptance. Ask what happened in their past and how it's affecting them now. Workers have a responsibility also to recognize their own triggers. A lot of workers have families with lived experience in that, and meeting a community member could be a trigger for something that's going on with them. Practice self-care. Where I work, we're asked to do one self-care thing every night because we work with people with a lot of trauma, like lifelong trauma, and remind community members that sharing your thoughts, feelings, or triggers can be beneficial to both the worker and the participant. This way we can offer them an individualized and tailored level of support. We're not here to save our community members. We're here to walk along them in their journey.
In order to provide a culturally safe and trauma-informed care approach to Indigenous people, it means it is essential to honor and incorporate cultural values, traditions, and healing practices. The historical trauma caused by colonization, residential schools, and ongoing systematic oppression must be acknowledged in care approaches.
Okay, and then the scenario that we created for harm reduction and trauma-informed care, a participant does not seem to trust their worker or the program that they're in, which is leading to the participant not being honest about their support needs. So the questions we posed to our lived experts: how can we get participants more involved in a program or their support, and how can workers and programs build trust with their participants in a trauma-informed way?
How can we get participants more involved in the program or their support? Trust is foundational in our work. When participants trust that they won't be judged by their workers, they are able to be more honest about their what their needs are. For example, what substances they might use, and that allows us to safely plan with them. An understanding of your participants can help deliver proper care. Understanding what recovery is for them, what their desired health or wellness outcomes are, and will allow us to offer them the most effective form of support and care. And I just want to mention, when I was out there and it was my turn to sit and, you know, communicate with somebody on how I was feeling. I had a peer support worker who had lived experience, and I'm coming in her office, we're having our case meeting, whichever, and she asked me how I am. I said, I'm good. Things are great. And she's like, okay, how are you really? And I tell you, when you know, the second time around, I was like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is bullshit. I have to do this every morning, then this is happening, and it's just like, you know, when you have a lived expert have a lived expert on your team, they can break down barriers, they can break down the walls, they can relate, they have those experiences, you know, they know what it's like to be judged, they know what it's like to have addictions and houselessness issues. It's like, I don't know, for myself, it's super important to have a lived expert on your team somewhere along the way, because 9 times out of 10, we're going to extract information that you can't, and I feel like that's really important. Yeah. Oh, I still have more.
We're tired.
If they aren't engaging in their supports, getting them involved might be as simple as asking them why aren't they engaging? Asking them if they still want the service. We wanted to come from a strength-based perspective. Our participants are survivors. They have survived being homeless and more. At the end of the day, we need to respect the decisions our participants make when it comes to what supports they need. It is their life after all. They deserve to be the ones living it, not us. No, I'm not sure. Us.
Trust is not given, it is earned. I've had workers who figured that community members should respect them because they're the worker. And I call bullshit, you know, because it's earned. And do what you say you will do for a community member. If you don't know something, tell them that. Be open, honest, and direct, and let them know your limits. I'm very clear. I work 7 to 3. I don't check my phone weekends, which is a lie. I do in case there's an emergency. You know, share information about yourself. When I'm given a file to do, I read it. And then when I go meet a person, if they're a person who uses substances, I share my experience. I say I'm a person who did drugs for 25 years, 23 years was injection drug use. And that's a connection, trust right there. They say, I can trust you. I wish there were more workers like you. I mean, I'm an open book. I'm old, I'm an open book. They all know I have a dog. That I make homemade dog food. Tell them how long you've been with the agency, how long you've worked with the community. Consistency is huge. A lot of community members don't have phones, so we set up appointments, a scheduled appointment for one lady, 1:30 every Friday. Another fellow is 2 o'clock on Monday. Another guy's 11:30 Friday. Mileage gets pretty good when you go from one end of the city to the other. And be flexible in your journey with them. You know, like I said, nothing's written in stone. If they don't want to meet that day, don't get pissed off. Just say, hey, when do you want to meet? What's going on? Do you want to talk about it? And if they don't, no big deal. Be non-judgmental and give them your full attention. They can tell when someone's being judgmental in a New York minute. You know, that's their sixth spidey sense. And give them your full attention with them. My phone is going off constantly. And they go, you can answer that. No, I can't. My focus is on you right now.
Okay, so we want to have a slide just as an opportunity for the lived experts to share any last final thoughts. Typically, it's a little bit more informal, and they're able to kind of share each other's slides and add in a little bit more. But yeah, Sonia, Lori, Rosemary, any final thoughts, anything you guys wanted to say, and then we'll move into questions from the audience.
Sure. I just really want to say how important like the committees are with Homeward Trust. So if you guys want to take away what you guys learned and implement your own ideas for your own committees or just safe spaces for lived experts, and just really get like ideas from them, because they do make a difference. And yeah, it's like amazing community building and everything. So yes.
Yeah, and we can find out more about somebody than someone who's never had the experience. And just don't be afraid of the community. Sometimes they're just more afraid of you than you are of them. I had a worker one time say, like I said, I can't work with that person. You know, I got him a house and he's drinking wine and bringing people in there. And I just started with our agency. It was a meeting at Homeward Trust actually. And I turned around to him and I said, how would you like it if someone told you you couldn't have a glass of wine in your house? Oh, I never thought of that. I said, if it weren't for the community, needing what we may know, none of us would have a job. So, I'm not really sure what else I said.
I want to share a little story. When I was working at a homeless shelter in downtown Edmonton, and I seen this First Nations man. He was probably later 50s, early 60s, and he was sitting against the wall. He was drinking his vodka, and he was swearing at this kid. And then I seen him kind of get up and was like starting to whack this kid. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, that's how they're gonna learn. And I'm like, what do you mean? And then the guy just started like asking him questions. And he said, well, that's what happened to me in residential school. That's how I was treated. And I was like, and so, but look at you now. Like, you're in this position, and now you're taking what was happened to you to somebody younger. I said, we need to stop this. And he just kind of looked at me and he was like, no one's ever spoken to me like that before. And I'm like, well, like I've grown up down here my whole life. I've seen lots. If I see something that's not fair or some kind of injustice, I'm going to say something. You might not like what I'm going to say, but you'll hear it. And then you can just see the emotion in his face, and he just started crying. And it was like, I felt awful for the whole situation, but it was like right after that he was, everything was coming out. He was telling his experiences, what was happening. He just wanted to go on rest, and I'm like, well, let's go inside and get you a bed. He's like, I can get a bed, and it's just like, it made me a little bit emotional then, but at the same time, it's like, I not that I'm wanting to teach my elder, but at the same time, if you hear from somebody younger on the actions of an adult or somebody older than you, sometimes that'll be that little voice in the head, like, okay, this is not right, we gotta stop this now. And I feel like, that day, it kind of, took me to a different place, right? And
And don't think you don't have an impact by showing kindness to the community. I worked with a fellow, and man, I could have kicked his ass so many times. You know, and he sent me a text last week and said, I want to thank you for everything you did for me, all the shit you gave me. He said, I've been sober now for 6 months and I'm registering for university. You know, so.
Does anyone in our audience have questions? Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a question. I was doing some counseling on a homeless shelter, and it was a couple I was working with, and she kept looking down and not looking at the phone. And as I was talking, she eventually looked up, and he just made a fist and just gave her one. And I just was shocked. I said, what did you do that for? She looking at that man over there, and I said, she was just looking up. I said, I think she's interested in the conversation, and we got up and left. And so we just chatted for a bit, not really about that. And he came back, he said, well, what did she say? I said, she didn't say anything negative, but I saw what she did to her, and that's beautiful. You're a couple, you should love each other. And it's hard, like, what do you say, you know, like, what do you do? It's shocking.
Yeah.
Just one quick reminder, if you can work on some of the thoughts, just because for folks on the stream to be able to hear, it's harder for without a microphone.
Do we have a microphone?
Not in this room.
Okay, okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
Sure, yeah.
You were mentioning like it was Homeward Trust.
Yeah.
No, that's Alberta based.
Yeah, Homeward Trust is in Edmonton, yeah.
Okay, so you don't sign up to other businesses like that?
No, so the question for those who are tuning in is Homeward Trust able to accept referrals from like outside of Edmonton or Alberta? No, we just work within Edmonton.
My foster brother asks me that all the time. He lives in Slave Lake. They shut down the homeless shelter there. They are telling the missionaries not to feed the house people that are unhoused. And they also got a bus and shipped a bunch of them to Edmonton, you know, which is to me bullshit. He said, can't Homeward Trust move to Slave Lake? I said, no, we wish we could, but.
Yeah.
Your, this training.
Yeah.
Do you target organizations, government agencies, where you said you have done the training now a few times? Where have you done this training?
Yeah, so the question is, where have we done the training? How our agency works, like Homeward Trust, is we're the system planners within Edmonton. So we get all funding from all 3 levels of government and then contract frontline services out to different agencies within Edmonton who are already doing similar work. And part of our responsibility within that role is providing access to frontline workers, managers, directors, access to training. So folks can sign up for the training and attend. It's available to, I think we have like at least like 20 different agencies that we are partnered with or connected with. And they can sign up, send their frontline staff, managers, directors, anyone like that.
Can I give you a part two?
Sure.
So the organization, and I'm in Ontario, southern Ontario, in a very rural, conservative area, so that'll tell you something right now.
Do you want Danielle Smith? We don't want her.
So my organization is a nonprofit, grassroots, outreach shopping centers in a very rural community. But the entirety of our organization is all peer-led.
Yeah.
Completely. We actually use the phrase people with lived and living expertise. That's what we do. My question to you is do you have a model that an organization can tap into for this kind of, we do a lot of trainings and anti-stigma education, things like that, but we've never gone to a level of government or municipal workers or outreach, hasn't gone to that level. But I'm frankly very interested in this training.
Would it be a model for the committees themselves or the training, or both?
If I wanted to create this training with my peer-to-peer team,
Yeah, I can give you, my contact information will be available in black. I'll just put it on now. Feel free to take down my contact information. It's Katie, it's the first one. And I can, we can chat about what it was like to create the training and kind of things to consider and all of that stuff. Yeah.
And as far as we know, we're the first peer-led training in Canada.
Yeah, we're the first of the like homeless and housing sector for this type of training. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm just gonna stand up. So.
Yeah. No, perfect. Thank you.
My name is Amola, and I'm part of, or I work for research that's part of Carleton University, and they're essentially doing research on housing, safe and affordable housing. And although I'm not directly part of the research, I lead a committee called the First Voice Advisory Committee, which is a committee, it's no one knows about it yet, but it's a committee with people with lived experience of homelessness and housing precarities. And the biggest challenge for me is how I can integrate those people into the research, because I'm assuming the end goal for that research is to find solutions for, safe and affordable housing. So if, any of you have any tips on how I can best integrate these people, these lived experts into, just research, because they're not researchers, I'm not a researcher, but it is research on housing and homelessness, and it's something that you need to be part of.
So, sorry, I'll clarify how you can best utilize them in terms of them being researchers or those who are responding to the research.
Or how they can be part of researchers, part of the research process. For example, when they're making up when they're doing interviews to different participants, using a trauma-informed approach, different things like that. That has been incorporated, but I'm thinking of other ways to integrate them into such a complex thing in a way.
Yeah.
So.
Are they being compensated for their time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so we're giving them money.
And then let them know the end result, because a lot of community members, I know in Edmonton's inner city, they're researched to the nines, and then they never hear anything after they've done all the interviews and that. But make them a big part of it, because that's really empowering for them.
Yeah. How can they become a big part of it? What roles could they take on? Is more the question.
That's more.
Yeah.
Well, give them jobs to do. I know when I ran the provincial drug users initiative, we gave different roles to people. They were the ambassadors. Do you want to be in charge of getting the snacks? Do you want to be in charge of getting people here? Handing out bus tickets to the community. Just empower them. Give them that power that, hey, I'm part of something and I'm given roles to do within.
I would say from a staff perspective too, I would honestly ask them. If there's any other ways that they could see themselves fitting into the researching. I imagine, because they would have a better understanding of what the research has looked like so far, and even if it's just choices or just getting them to brainstorm, it might not be an immediate response, but I would be surprised if they didn't have ideas or thoughts about how they could get themselves involved with it.
I just have one thing to add. So, definitely getting them to make their own research questions, and I feel like they would probably, what's the word? Get into it more if it's coming from their perspective and their ideas of what they want to research and the questions that they want to ask.
Just also, if it's Ottawa-based specifically, the research?
No, it's just all of Canada.
Okay.
Get in touch with Katie.
Yeah. Oh, if anyone wants to come.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Thank you to Sir at the back. Appreciate the use of the microphone. Hi, I'm George. Lived experience, person of lived and living experience and expertise. Became a little concerned with the conversation here. Let me give you for example. Who owns the data in a by means list? Okay. will the people that are participating co-own the intellectual property that's been created in this research? That's kind of the starting point for me with how are you engaging and empowering means, you know, are you doing to the people? Are you doing for the people? Is it with the people? And is there an element that is designed that is going to be done by the people? And that by is like from beginning through to end. So the concerns, you know, I have is, yes, if you're compensating them, are you actually holding them in a place of oppression by buying their intellectual property at a very discounted rate? Okay, my intellectual property, my time, I value in the thousands of dollars. Most people can't afford me, and yet I will gladly give it away for free in an appropriate circumstance. So that's where I be very, very careful. You know, truly try and grasp it from their perspective and understand that for things like two words that I use frequently, poorist and tourism, they're not even defined. And who's going to go forward and define them? Should it not be defined by the actual people living the reality at the street, sewer, gutter level? So we're at a beginning place in so many things, and it's important to really get it right. I commend you all for, you know, your effort and promoting how important the lived experience voice is, and yet I stand as an independent outside and say to organizations, probably 85% of your effort is undermined if you don't have that lived experience voice consulting and guiding. The classes and castas and tourism just undermines so much when we don't get it. So I thank you, and the question kind of that I would put to you, good folks, since you seem to all be within the system.
Well, they're like so they're from a committee that's a part of Homeward, so they advise us.
Okay. So not quite within the system, but advising. Bit of an arm's length. Excellent. So someone put an excellent example up, and I'm going, do you have enough arm's length when the problem is government policy and procedure to have enough independence to be able to go, big problem, advocate for the person that brought people into their home, got evicted for doing the morally right thing, but it's legalistically made criminal. And then be able to escalate and bring that up, because when I'm sitting at the back getting a sense of, I don't get a sense of ending homelessness in Edmonton, I get a sense of mitigating homelessness in Edmonton. So that the elevating up of that person's challenge of, I brought my friends in, are you able to, you know, bring that to a different forum where it can be properly brought out and discussed? Can you answer how you are having success in that regard, please?
You can answer.
So I will say they're an advisory group for Homeward Fest. So Homeward Fest is not a government organization. I very much appreciate what you're saying, and I know that there are a lot of issues that cause the current crisis of housing and homelessness within Edmonton and just like across Canada and Turtle Island itself that go beyond like what we're able to do within our organization. So unfortunately, because we're not government, we're not always like able to really advocate for that type of change and to go to those like governing bodies or to the places and like the law organizations that can make some of the changes that you're like talking about, referencing. So there's always going to be, unfortunately, a limit of what we're able to do, but yeah, so there's.
My sense is we're at an evolve or die time. Change isn't good enough. And so dream bigger, aspire greater, and invite me over.
Okay, any other questions?
just have a question concerning your training. Now, I know you had mentioned that you were just based in Edmonton.
Yeah.
But is your organization open to the idea of having other organizations from away come to you for training?
For this one, in terms of other organizations coming away to Edmonton, it is something we've talked about. It does get a little bit tricky because of my role in the training is like the facilitation and like debriefing aspect of it. So we have been trying to figure out what that could look like in terms of if we were to offer this training outside of Homeward Fest or outside of its current sort of standing, what that might look like. So feel free to take down my contact information if you're interested in it. There's just a lot of sort of logistics of that every time I ask a question, I get 9 more back at me about what that will actually look like in practice. But it is something we've considered because we've been asked about it quite a few times. But I also will say that while I love our lived experts, I think that it's important for communities to feel empowered to do this training themselves and with those who have lived and living experience of the current realities of that community too. Last call? No? Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, thank you everyone. Shima Gwedge for attending. Thank you to our speakers. It was a very lovely session. There's going to be a welcome reception upstairs where we had